Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As you can see from the title of this video, you're like, who are you talking to, mommy? As you can see from the title of this video, this is going to be a sourdough tutorial. I think most of this video is just going to be a voiceover because I think that'll be the easiest way for you to understand everything that's going on. I have Miss Girly here with me. But I just wanted to intro this video, say hello, have you seen my face. I am pretty new. I don't know if I was so, yeah, I think I'm still pretty new at making sourdough, but I just wanted to encourage those that are thinking like, should I make it? I want to make sourdough, I'm not sure. Because that's exactly where I was. I kept making excuses, and then finally I started the process, and there is quite a learning curve. My first few loaves just did not work out at all, and then I got to the point that I just started getting like big, huge, nice loaves with nice ears, and it just made the process that much more fun. But just don't be discouraged if your first few loaves don't come out great. Sourdough is known as the hardest bread to make because it is a very finicky bread, and yeah, there are just so many little things to control that can completely change the outcome of the bread. I've now been talking for almost 2 minutes, so let's just hop into the tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, I'll see you at the end. Welcome to the voiceover part of this video. So the first step in making sourdough is to feed your starter. So I am taking 60 grams of my starter, and then I'm going to feed it with flour and water. I actually keep my sourdough starter in the fridge, so I do like to feed it a couple of times before I make my sourdough, but I'm just showing you the one time. I didn't show you actually making a starter, but there are plenty of videos online, so look into that. So what I am doing, once I take 60 grams of my starter, I'm giving it 50 grams of whole wheat flour and then 50 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour. I just found that doing that mixture activates my starter the best. I've tried doing purely all-purpose flour and it just didn't work as well. You do want to make sure you're using unbleached all-purpose flour because that's the only way the bacteria can feed off of the flour, and that's what your starter is. After that, you want to take 100 grams of water, and I'm showing you that I'm taking the temperature of the water to make sure it's 85 degrees. I don't really do that now that I've made a few loaves, but I would say for the first few, and if you want to be really exact, make sure that your water is 85 degrees. Add the water, then you're going to stir it. And I like to put a little line on the jar to make sure that my starter is rising. Especially when you're starting out, you want your starter to rise at least double before actually using the starter. And I'm going to let you listen to this little part of the video. What?
Why am I still filming?
One thing that I really want to include in this video is what to do with your sourdough starter discard, and that's just like the part of the starter that you don't use after you feed it. So one thing you can do is actually just fry up the sourdough discard, and it just ends up being like fried sourdough bread. It's pretty easy. You just add some oil to the pan, pour in your sourdough starter discard, let it cook until the top kind of looks like an English muffin. You can add whatever seasonings you want. I added za'atar and garlic powder, and then I like to dip it. I like this vegan caramelized dip right now. Another thing that you can do with your sourdough starter discard, which is a little bit more involved, is make sourdough pancakes. I got this recipe from Farmhouse on Boone, and it's just 2 cups of sourdough starter discard, 2 eggs, a 1/4 cup of melted coconut oil, 2 tablespoons honey, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So tasty. They're kind of like buttery from the coconut oil and then still light and crispy. It has those same health benefits that sourdough has. I'm going to let the audio from the actual clip for this first part play out because I just think it's so funny. I'll have the directions on the screen.
That's flour. You put in bowl.
Did you say rice flour?
So that's flour. You put more in bowl. And you put more until you think it's just enough flour.
I'm weighing it.
Then you put the flour on the other counter. And you put this flour. Yes. And you put more. And now you got brown and white flour. And looks cool. And this is my science experiment. How you mix 2 flours.
Okay. You're laughing more at yourself than I am.
And get ready for the volcano. Wow.
It's not doing anything.
Now you see we made a couple islands.
And I actually know what the islands are. All right, you may have thought that was dumb, but I'm still laughing about it. So after you combine your flours and your water, you just want to mix it with a wooden spoon. And then for the final part of the combining, I would just use your hands just to kind of make sure everything is really all incorporated. I'm just fast forwarding through this because I don't think you need to fully see everything. And then you want to cover it with a damp dishcloth and let it sit for 45 minutes. And this is called autolyse. Here I'm just showing you what my starter looks like after about 4 hours. You want to let it activate for 3 to 4, and you'll know it's ready, 1, from the doubling, and then 2, you'll see all those bubbles on top. And after that, you're going to add 75 grams of your starter and 10 grams of salt on top of your dough after it has autolysed for 45 minutes. And then you're just going to incorporate everything all together with your hands. It is going to take a little bit of time, and your dough is not going to be you can hear Jude in the background. Your dough is not going to be completely smooth. That's completely fine. You're going to have time to get your dough more smooth. And then you're going to cover it again for 30 minutes, and this starts the stretch and fold process. So after those 30 minutes, you're going to take off the cover again, and you're going to do your first stretch and fold. I like to do this first by dampening your hands. It's going to make it a lot easier to do this process, and I like to loosen the dough from the bowl first, and then you kind of pick up the dough from the bottom, stretch it out, and then fold the dough on top of each other. And you do that at least 4 times. Sometimes I do it a little bit more than 4 times, but you'll see that I'm pausing to even dampen my hands again, because if your hands are dry, it's going to make this process very hard. The dough is going to stick to your hands. It's just going to be a mess. So if you have to stop and add some water to your hands, that's fine. The last step I like to do is flip over the dough before, I don't know why Corey did this with Geek Girl. I like to flip over the dough before I cover it again. And now I'm fast forwarding through the rest of the stretch and fold process. So you're going to keep covering your dough for 30 minutes, stretch and fold, cover it for 30 minutes, stretch and fold, and then you're going to do that a total of 4 times over the course of 2 hours. You're going to see that throughout all the stretches and folds, you see me like zooming in and out because I want to make sure you can see everything. Your dough is going to start becoming smoother. Your dough is going to become fluffier, and it's going to like look a little bigger each time, and it's going to automatically start pulling away from the edges by itself. Versus the beginning, you could see that I was really like tugging at it to pull away. By the last one, it's going to be easy to pull away. And then look how like smooth and supple and round your dough is after the last stretch and fold. After the last stretch and fold, you're going to cover your dough and let it bulk rise for 4 to 7 hours. This is going to depend on how warm your house is. I usually end up doing around 5 hours. And by the end, you'll see that like your dough is risen and it's bubbly. At that point, you are going to do your first shaping, your initial shaping. So you want to take a cutting board, whatever flat surface, add some flour, but not too much. And then you're going to pour your dough out onto your surface. I like to use this dough scraper or bowl scraper, but you really can just use your hands if you don't have one. I would recommend buying like the sourdough starter kit from Amazon. It's pretty cheap. Then you want to put some flour on your hands, and you can use your bench scraper to flip over your dough. I like to do this just so the dough isn't as wet. You do want your dough to remain wet, and that's what makes sourdough kind of hard to work with. But when it's too wet, especially for beginners, I think it's just too difficult to work with. So I like to make sure that both sides have a little bit of flour. At that point, I stretch out my dough into a rectangular shape, and because this is just the initial shaping, all I do is fold it over itself and like kind of make it into a log, and then fold the outer sides of the log in under so you have more like a ball shape. I'm making a round sourdough loaf. You can obviously make different loaf shapes, but this is the loaf shape that I'm going for. Once you have your initial shaping, you want to leave it on your surface and cover it for 30 minutes just to let it rest before doing your final shaping. For the final shaping, what you want to do is flour. If you don't have a Banneton basket, that's what I'm using. You can just use a bowl, and you want to make sure you generously flour it. You can see how much flour I'm using for this tiny bowl, and I'm using rice flour, which is the best flour to use to make sure it doesn't stick to the banana basket, your dough doesn't stick, but that it doesn't add too much flour to the actual dough. Once your banana basket is ready, you're going to do your final shaping. Again, get some flour in your hands and a little bit more flour on your dough and your dough scraper, your bench scraper. I keep saying the wrong name. And again, I'm talking to Corey here. That's why I keep pausing. Again, I am just flipping the dough a little bit to make sure it's not too sticky to work with. And then there are many ways to shape sourdough loaves, but this is the way that I learned. So I'm making it into that rectangle shape again, and then I'm doing a kind of crisscross down and folding the dough on top of each other. So kind of like making a zipper, I guess is a good way to say it. And then once the dough is zigzagged crisscross on top of each other, I'm again making that log shape that I made in the initial shaping and then tucking it in until it's that ball round loaf shape. Once you've done your final shaping, you're going to put your dough into your bantam basket or bowl, whatever you're using, and you're going to let it do its final rise in the fridge overnight. I found this is just the easiest way to do it. Sourdough was already like a day process, so putting it in the fridge makes it so it's not actually 24 hours, and it makes it easier to score. So I leave it in the fridge for anywhere from like 9 to 12 hours, honestly, and then the next day you want to cover it too. The next day, you want to preheat your oven to 500 degrees, and you want to put your Dutch oven in the oven while it's preheating and let it sit in the oven for an hour. And about like 5 minutes until that hour is up, you want to take a parchment paper, flip out your dough onto the parchment paper. The parchment just makes it easier to put it into your Dutch oven. You can see that I had some issues flipping. And then you want to take a little brush and you want to dust off any of the excess flour, because remember we generously floured our bantam basket just to make sure that the dough didn't stick as it did its final rise, but now we just don't need all this excess flour. So now comes the fun part. You get to score your dough, and this is the part that I'm still working on. You always want to do this first scoring that you see, because that's just making sure that the dough can breathe and doesn't pop in random spots. But I'm still trying to like get better. Oh, Judah's mad. I'm still trying to get better at doing little patterns because I think they're fun, but they're still difficult for me. So this is a little wheat pattern that didn't turn out great, but the only way I'm going to get better is by doing it. Once you're done scoring, you're going to put your dough in your Dutch oven with the lid on and bake it for 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes is up, you're going to take off the lid and then lower your temperature of your oven to 450 degrees and bake it for another 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the color of your loaf. It's really just going to depend on your oven. So yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. A little tip is to put a baking sheet underneath your Dutch oven to make sure that the bottom of your bread does not burn, and then you get your loaf. I'm gonna let the rest of this video play out just with Corey pretending to give Jude some bread. But yeah, I'm happy with this bread. Good ear, good open crumb. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Oh my, try to grab it. It's funny.
You want?
Sugar can't eat, silly. Gotta eat. No. Filming this seconds after filming the intro, but you're going to see at the end of this video. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you, even if you're not going to try out sourdough, I hope you like to see the process. But I do encourage you, if you've been thinking about it, just do it. Make your starter from scratch. I did that and it actually wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And now you have your starter. You can share your starter with friends. Miss Girl is getting antsy and trying to play with my laptop cord. So I'm going to end this outro part now. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. Bye. Say bye. Bye. Good job, girl.